70% of the excess sodium in people's diets come from processed foods. So we want to think outside the box as you eat outside of a box. So if you can try to practice not eating in a box, you're automatically limiting your sodium. You're automatically limiting preservatives, which have negative effects on your brain, which correlates with appetite. It correlates with just what's going on in your body, the microbiome, all of these things, the processed foods, the additives and preservatives attack.
Welcome to the Plant-Based DFW podcast weekly show with Dr. Riz and Maya. Our podcast focuses on lifestyle medicine, which is the use of evidence-based lifestyle therapeutic approaches, such as a whole food plant-based diet, regular physical exercise, adequate sleep, and stress management to treat and even reverse the lifestyle-related chronic diseases that are all too prevalent. Every week, we will feature physicians, dietitians, health coaches, and everyday people who will share their stories and speak on one of these lifestyle medicine modalities. Let's meet today's podcast guest. Alisa Bloom is a registered dietitian who has had her share of food sensitivities. She has suffered with brain fog, bloating, digestive ups and downs, aches and pains, weight resistance, and food cravings. Using evidence-based research, she discovered the root cause of food and chemical sensitivities that were wreaking havoc on her immune system. She now chooses anti-inflammatory foods tailored to calm her system while supplementing correctly to support and repair the gut-brain connection. Understanding the origin of inflammation has become Alisa's life passion. She works to help others who suffer from these symptoms feel better. She gets to the root cause by incorporating food as medicine and the right forms of vitamins, minerals, and supplements for realistic, effective, and lasting change. Alisa does have a 6-week course coming up this month, so make sure to check the link that I will include in the show notes. And her website is liveyourbest365.com. I hope you enjoy this episode. I can't wait to learn more from you, Alisa. So welcome.
Well, thank you for having me here. I'm excited to be here.
So I like that you're also board certified in lifestyle medicine.
Yes, I am. Yes.
What year did you take your board exam?
So I took it in 2019, and actually just a kind of an added bonus, I remember, I think it was 4 years prior to that was my first lifestyle medicine conference where I was excited. Why? Because I'm a dietitian. And so this is about food. This is about food as medicine for lifestyle. And I remember being in the buffet line for lunch behind who heads up the nursing working group at the time. And I turned to her and I said, so where's the dietitian group? I can't wait to take part of this. And she just stared at me and stopped. I said, well, I guess I'll be starting one. So that is how the RDN, or the dietitian working group, came to be. So to your point, I did feel a wonderful obligation to take part of being board certified.
Cam, now this is kind of like the better version, for the graduate program, I think that Dr. Frady's put together.
But you know what? I have to confess that I think I had a leg up only because, yes, you did mention that I'm a health and wellness coach. Yes. So I became into the health and wellness coaching arena through Well Coaches, who is also a sponsor of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. So here I was already incorporating aspects of Well Coaches, the health and wellness coaching program, and all that's part of the test. So I had that and dietitian background. So that was kind of that.
I'm familiar with Well Coaches. I've also known other health coaches that have gone through that program, but I hear good things about it. But I guess it's your previous background and training in whatever other field. But congratulations for being board certified in lifestyle medicine.
Thank you very much.
You also have a lot of credentials. So you have a master's in public health.
So here's kind of the background. For being a dietitian, the difference between dietitian and nutritionist, anyone can technically call themselves a nutritionist. So that's a generic term. The dietitian credential is what incorporates the licensure, the mandatory credentialing every year, and the hours and the education. Mm-hmm. And so I got that process done. And as I started practicing, I remember I was in an ICU. I was doing the tube feedings and all the types of complicated feedings. And I just remember looking around saying, I would like to help keep keep people out of here. And so ended up inverting the pyramid, if you will, from being very narrowly clinically focused. And that's where I ended up getting a master in public health so that I could teach people, even though I love the science and can do that, I could teach that in lay terms to the public. And so moving forward, every job that I've had has correlated with nutrition. And so it's always been a passion. It continues to still be. And then what ended up happening was I also enjoy the psychological component, more of the motivational interviewing part, the what makes people why do what they do. If I work with what I like to call the 7 to 11 dinner, where people are done with dinner and then they just keep going back and forth and back and forth, and it's, until it's 11, and what stops them is, oh, I did it again. So, that's not so much knowing that you're supposed to stop. That's kind of having to work with what issues have you do that in the first place. So when I found Well Coaches through the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, really, I thought that was just a perfect merriment, because that incorporated more of the psychology of why, and then I could use the training that I have as a dietitian and just confound that. And then as I was hoping, because I would use that more to work with people nationally, and then we fell into a pandemic where that happened sooner than I probably would have done. So, I am a glass half full kind of person. So it ended up working well, because then as a coaching, you can teach more broadly, nationally as an option, versus licensure of dietitian is more by state when you get into specific medical nutrition therapies.
So can we touch a little bit on that then? Because I've often wondered, now, what are those limitations? And you just kind of touched on it a little bit as a registered dietitian, who can you see? Do insurance companies cover this? I guess that's kind of going a little bit more in depth, but.
Oh, there is a relatively simple answer. Okay. It's for example, whoever comes to me with whichever state they may be in, I take a look at that state's licensure registration requirements, and if they require a license, I have contacted state boards before to simply pay a fee and then have that reciprocity. Some states do not have that at all, in which case I have a wonderful network of colleagues that I can refer people over to. Other times, even as far as coverage. So for example, I'm in Illinois. I had someone come to me from Indiana, and I had looked at that route to see what needs to be done, and also contacted her specific insurance carrier, who said, we have reciprocity, she's covered, you're covered. So, things happen, but they do have to be done on a case-by-case basis.
How did you even take interest in all of this? What led you initially to want to help people through nutrition and then just sending them towards better lifestyle approaches?
That's an interesting question. I do like that question, though. First, I do like to say that I come from the ancillary family, meaning that my father was a pharmacist, my brothers are podiatrists. So, hey, another ancillary service as a dietitian. But it was more of, I was always fascinated by what goes in the body and how it affects you. And that really stems from the fact that I have a strong self and family history of being sensitive to so many things, that we were literally affected by the foods that we ate. And I didn't understand what that was, or maybe it was sort of trying to get a mastery of, what is going on? I don't know. But I've always had that interest. And it always came from what was going in, and how people viewed food, and how the role that food played in your life. And so from there, that's where it started. That's where I started to teach myself ways about nutrition, ways about eating, but they were always more not just the basic thing that you could read on the internet. It wasn't that simple. It was just more of a lot of the whys behind, and a lot of dealing with the emotions within, and the reactions to them, the things that happen. And it really wasn't until later in my career that I was able to get to the root of the things that were causing issues for me and my family. So that was kind of interesting so that only rekindled everything for my interest. So that was helpful, put it that way.
I found your website and started going through your blog, and I said, my goodness, you really educate your public.
Thank you. Someone found me. I am grateful. Thank you.
Yeah. I was wondering if we can just kind of start with what you talk about on your blog. And last year you did a wonderful job of really being consistent with your blog and touching on topics to support your followers.
Last year, when I started blogging, if you will, I think it was first a matter of, and I'm involved in business mastermind colleagues and courses, things like that. But it became the biggest thing is consistency. And I really wanted to continue to help people. So that's still always been a part of who I was. And so it became, all right, the newsletter has to be consistent. So I can understand and talk to my audience. And out of that became just simply an expanded version, became a blog. And so really what you see on there, thank you, is just a compilation of consistency. If anyone's ever heard that in many different ways, different forms in your life, that's a product of consistency. It's just simply just taking a higher level or a consistent educating. And so there's a bunch of topics up there.
Yeah. Well, let's focus on two. One of them is why we should stay away from processed foods. And the other one is how we can strengthen our immune system as we're going through this pandemic.
I started a course. I did a course last year, and I'm probably going to repeat a course this year, but it's going to come ditching processed foods was essentially the basis of it. It will incorporate part of that too. Is that, a lot of times people, they get stuck. They don't know where to start. If they think about becoming completely plant-based, plant-centered, how do I start? What do I do? How do I prepare? And the issue is for a lot of people, simply you can get plant-based garbage to eat. It's pretty easy to do. But when you're not used to it, one big part of a plant-based diet is having to actually prepare things yourself to avoid eating what I call like a third grader. Every little piece of this, piece of this, piece of that. And why is that so difficult? Because most people have some experience with grabbing fast type foods. I don't mean that, grabbing fast food isn't always, I'm not talking about just the drive-through. I'm talking about anything prepackaged, pre-prepared, something with its own powdered sauce. Okay. It's something that you reconstitute. That's going to have high sodium in it. So as we touched on it, 70% of the excess sodium in people's diets come from processed foods. So we want to think outside the box as you eat outside of a box. So if you can try to practice not eating in a box, you're automatically limiting your sodium. You're automatically limiting preservatives, which have negative effects on your brain, which correlates with appetite. It correlates with just body, what's going on in your body, the microbiome, all of these things, the processed foods, the additives and preservatives attack. And you're also eliminating probably a lot of empty nutrient dense calories. So empty high calorie foods. So if you could just start by eliminating processed foods, look at the amazing things that can happen. What technically happens is the inflammation automatically goes down. So you have a lot of less bloat. You're feeling, you're thinking clearer. You have more energy. You can sleep better. So it really attacks a whole lot just by simply taking away processed foods.
It is true now 2020 kind of has forced a lot of us to just not only be at home, but not eat out as much. So now we're spending more time in the kitchen. But it can get tricky because then you have all the other convenience foods that you can buy from the grocery stores.
Or your favorite takeout that still isn't ideal. So you can still kind of figure out, you still have to maneuver. Ideally, in an ideal world, wouldn't it be nice if we could create our own fast food counterparts? So you still have to preserve some of your favorites, but in a different way.
Reading labels and understanding what is actually found, because a lot of times, who teaches you how to read a label?
So when I was doing my internship, so as part of the training for a dietitian, you have to do a dietetic internship, much like the medical field. And I did that in Cincinnati, and because of the nature of the stipends and that just particular year, I was on food stamps. And so food stamps forced me to eat outside of the box. I didn't realize what I was doing. I just had to meet my requirement to help budget. So, you have a lot of beans, you have all these things that are unprocessed and they're whole foods. I felt fabulous. And it was just interesting how when I started to look at my diet, even decades later, it was, wait a minute, I've already done this. I just kind of like, go back there, pretend like that was it.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
When people say it has to be expensive, it doesn't have to be.
No, and as a matter of fact, when you cook from scratch, and then if you batch cook, not only is it less expensive because you're preparing things from scratch, but also then you're making life easier. So it's like you say, you make your own versions of fast food at home when you have the food cooked at different levels.
People do have to, they underestimate the planning part. And so, and also to quite frankly, underestimate hunger. So think about the people who get, or when you inadvertently, whatever reason, you ate too much and you just you feel uncomfortable. It's not working for you. What are you thinking? I'll never eat again. This typically happens the morning after Thanksgiving, right? I am never eating again. Diet starts today. So you come to that, let's continue with the Thanksgiving frenzy. So you wake up Friday, that's what happens. You don't eat anything. By 1-2 o'clock, guess what? Your blood sugar went down. You're starving. What are you eating? You're eating the Thanksgiving leftovers again. So, a lot of times, even when I work with people, I tell them we work to accept hunger, and that the body will naturally give you your appetite back. That's what you want. And if I give you a bucket of the worst food for you, guess what? You're still going to be hungry 6 hours later. So if we work to accept that as part of naturally who we are versus being disappointed and angry and resentful that you're hungry again, then things change. Because it stops the scarcity problem.
Yeah, that's such a good point. You're talking about the psychological component to all of this, and any kind of hobby, anything new that you are interested in learning how to do. If your why is strong, you keep going. When I learned to cook a little bit healthier, it was like, it made the process a little longer as I was learning, but then, you get your partner involved or a friend involved, and then you do it together, and it's a lot of fun.
And there's ways to schedule that too. You can schedule it so it's not overwhelming.
Yeah, so I do want to talk about your support group, because you also recently did a challenge. Was it the staying away from processed foods kind of challenge?
Just the processed foods. It was actually the kind of a flavor, if you will, of leading into the course that I had offered at the time. Yeah. So it was 5 days of let's do this together and try to see what it feels like just to take processed foods away. And the reason behind 5 days, quite honestly, is because it takes about, as you probably know, between about 3 and 4 days when you can really start seeing the benefits of things turning around for you when you've cleaned up your diet. Some would say, as I have said, you can feel as good as your next meal. But if you want to take that even further, go ahead and take it out 3, 4, 5 days, and then you can make a difference. So that's what I did. I held that in my Facebook group, Food Sanctuary.
And that's what it's called, Food Sanctuary. I love it. What kind of people are part of your group? Who joins it?
People who are interested in how food affects your mood, how it can help heal you, how it can play a balancing role in your life. So we do fun stuff, do polls, do fun facts. Things about, does anyone really know what one spaghetti noodle is? It's a spaghetto, in case you didn't know. But work with how food as medicine, things that if we pay attention to how food goes in and how it can make you feel. And I do answer some supplement questions, things like that.
So do your group members, are they open to the idea of what you just said, that food can be medicine?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I know that by dialogue in there, and I go live there every week on Fridays at 5 p.m. Central. So
wow.
If I talk about I guess a theme for the week would be on Instagram or Facebook, Live Your Best 365, and then I give a flavor of that, and then I take a deep dive on Fridays at 5 p.m. Central in the Facebook group.
I love challenges. They're a lot of fun. They're kind of, it gives you something to work with, and it makes it fun because then you can share photographs or share stories.
And it was fun. It wasn't simply wake up and say, okay, 5 days, eat nothing in a box, go. Kind of like that, but not quite. We worked with water to really to address the hydration component, because a lot of times people are walking around underhydrated, and it makes a difference. So we worked with those types of things and how to plan and besides eating outside of box.
Many times when someone is craving or feeling hungry, it's really that they're thirsty.
Hunger is confused as thirst. The other way around. Yeah. It can be.
What was the feedback in terms of what did they notice is hard about staying away from processed foods?
Yeah, it's interesting. The responses ran the gamut. It became everything I eat is in a box, and I didn't realize it, because when I went to go try to eat something outside of a box, I got hungry and nothing was around. So there was the planning component, which, we work to do that, but when you don't plan, those are the kind of situations you get into. I got into people's feedbacks. I have not felt better, and I didn't realize it could happen this quickly. So there were some benefits to that. I worked with substitutions, or something that people were craving or their favorites. So I would give them, if it was hard to find a salad dressing in a bottle, so I gave them some salad dressing recipes that were easy to prepare. And it was, if I do this, I feel better. I don't feel as negative as I did. And other times it became, one of them particularly was the water. It was just, I don't drink anything. I didn't realize it. And I didn't realize how much, I wouldn't be a dietitian if I didn't talk about some level of elimination, but it's true. Things don't move as well when you aren't properly hydrated. So people were pleasantly surprised. Wow, I don't need to, anything to help me eliminate. Now I can.
I don't give a lot of advice, but if people ask me what's a good tip, I like the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine has said this, but I'm sure other people have too, which is we're creatures of habit. So we don't really eat too many different foods throughout a week or the month. And so if you just focus on 3 healthy meals and then incorporate another healthy meal next week and incorporate another healthy meal, then you're not overwhelmed. And that's what I tell my mom. What foods do you like? Let's make the healthier version.
I had a similar thing. This is how I talk to people with whom I work, is if I gave you a dictionary and said, go home and read it, you kidding me? How am I supposed to do that? Versus if somebody told you, go learn 1 or 2 new words a week, guess what happens over time? And that's how I address people with whom I work in terms of learning new recipes and incorporating new foods, is let's pick 1 if that's where we're going to start, or maximum 2. I often tell people, don't get so excited that you think you're going to do this every day, 4 times a day, because it's not going to last. And so once I work with people to have them understand, just kick back and relax, because this is lifelong change. You don't have to read a dictionary of recipes, exactly kind of what you described is, let's back up. Let's just do it 1 or 2 new recipes a week.
Yeah. And so I like the idea of meeting people where they're at when you're working with them, either as a dietitian or health coach, is finding out where they're at and then seeing how much change they can make within their own journey. Because, expecting someone to just make a change overnight is kind of a little bit unrealistic. But when you work with clients and you're working one-on-one, you're basically meeting them where they're at. I know that your goal is to get people to eat more plants, more vegetables, and that's your main message.
When I work with people and I just try to essentially move the needle. So if wellness is its own spectrum, if you will, where you have a left side, you have a right side. And if people can move an inch in one way toward bettering themselves, well, to me, that's more meaningful, that 1 inch that can be maintained versus going all the way over this gold star standard that can be maintained for maybe 1 day, maybe 2 maximum days, and then it doesn't work. And I have people who come to me with all sorts of backgrounds in terms of how they view plant-centered diets. I do explain to people that, well, technically, there are studies that support you can go 100% plant-based, but evidence will show that your lab chemistry can change if that number is 60% for you, 70, 80, 90%. We don't know what that is, but it does vary among people. Mm-hmm. And so when people come to me, I just say, you know what, there are so many benefits of adding more plants. Let's see where you are. In fact, I most often tell my clients, you're going to have to meet yourself halfway. So how can we do this? And I've had people come to me who have hardly touched a vegetable, and I can't tell you how long. So with them, canned vegetables, go right ahead. We'll just try to lay off the salt. We'll have them drain all the liquid. And there's just ways to do this. And it's okay. There's no shame in how you start to feel better and start to take care of yourself. So a lot of times, sometimes people are ready to say, let's just start with one plant-based meal a day. How are we going to do that? And I teach them how to do that. And usually what ends up cascading, kind of like ditching the processed foods, once you start to feel better, it propels itself because you want to continue to feel that way. And a lot of times people who come to me, they just don't feel very good. And it's really a cumulative effect of inflammation, which has so many different symptoms. We could list them all day, right? Mm-hmm. And the issue is plants decrease inflammation. A whole food, plant-based diet will decrease your inflammation. Where they fall on that, hey, I'm willing to try and see where that is. Whatever percentage, if it's a meal, if it's a snack, if it's 2 meals, if they want to go all in, then I can support wherever they find themselves can do this at a realistic point.
I like that you take that approach of providing the right foods to reduce inflammation.
And I think too that, I don't know if you find this, but well, it may be different in some clinical universes, but for the most part, people don't understand that it's inflammation that they're suffering from. And so we really go by symptoms, and it's even things as intense food cravings or poor blood sugar balance, whether or not they're diabetic, poor sleeping habits, so these are all really a lot of what I talk about and like to talk about to my audience is the way food can help in all these aspects. So that's probably what you're noticing in terms of saying, that it's well-rounded. To me, it's all inflammation. Inflammation really affects everything. So there's lots of places to go where if you use food as medicine to decrease some of that inflammation, more than likely with more plants and whole foods, then you reap the benefits in so many other areas.
Yes, and I notice the difference too in my own diet, depending on what I eat. I'll have like previous injuries suddenly hurt, like on my wrist or my ankle. Suddenly there's a little bit of inflammation, or I have to stay away from fried foods and a lot of oil because I'll immediately start to break out. Wouldn't you say that's also inflammation?
Absolutely, 100%. And a lot of things too that people underestimate is that anything that you're trying to do for just bettering your health, decreasing inflammation, begins with healthy digestion. So when you look at that as the center before things that you're trying to do, incorporating more plants, well, they certainly help better digestion and how we absorb nutrients. My website is liveyourbest365.com. You can take a free digestive evaluation to take a look at your own digestion, and it just gives you a snapshot of where you're at and how things are moving or not. So
that's really cool. You really have put together such a great program in terms of your support group and also your blog. That's so informative. Can we just talk a little bit about where we can get our omega-3s? We keep hearing that fish oil is not necessarily the best approach.
Well, when we think about omega-3s and we think first line automatically goes to fish oil. Well, the purification of fish has changed over decades. So that's the one issue. So if you're going to supplement, you want to make sure that your sources are valid. Okay? Use that USP standardized mark to get you some quality grade supplement. Also, what people, I don't know if you come across this, but people don't understand that there are 11 types of omega-3s. I'll say that again. There are 11. If somebody grabbed their bottle of omega-3s right now, you'd probably see 2 or 3. So that's one reason why the diet is more comprehensive. But there are plant sources of omega-3s. So the body, has to do a little conversion, but that's okay. Things like hemp seeds and walnuts and chia seeds. These things are help build our omega-3s, but they're just in plant form.
The problem with focusing on whether something's just plant-based or vegan, sometimes we forget what is actually in some of the food that we're eating that can affect our health. So a lot of soups are loaded with sodium.
Soups are notoriously loaded in sodium, and all you have to do is look at a can of soup, look at a ramen package. A lot of times I tell people, quite frankly, to avoid soups when they're eating out or choosing in carry out these days, given the pandemic. So this is one thing I work with quite frequently is I'll give people recipes to make their own stock, make their own vegetables, type soups. But usually it's primarily in the stock, because what will happen is, just like we've touched on already here, is you get hungry. Now you're in the mood for soup. Well, if you don't have a stock prepared, or the thought of making a stock at that moment, it is a little daunting. So we touch on these things. And if I go through detailed preference histories of choices and things that people want to still have in their diet in some way, shape, or form, then that's the meeting themselves halfway. Well, then we need to get a plan in place so that these things are ready for you, that when you want to make a fabulous mushroom soup, you just are grabbing some stock from your freezer, and then we can put it together from there.
That sounds so nice and easy. Can we talk about excitotoxins? Because we don't touch on that topic at all on our podcast.
Excitotoxins are basically kind of in the name, excitotoxins. Well, they excite or stimulate the brain, and the taste buds is really what they're doing. They're making it's basically your taste buds on steroids. So they're in the form of preservatives and additives, so you can just leave it generic at that. But what they do is if they're exciting your taste buds, they're messing with the serotonin dopamine interaction, because you want and crave more. They're teaching your body and brain to respond to these types of chemicals. They can alter your insulin sensitivity and other hormones. They have you craving more of these types of foods, which are generally nutrient dense, high calorie, empty calories, and very high calorie and high salt. And they serve to bloat you. They serve to add to that inflammation. People who are on medication or not medication, that excitatory component to their brain can really interfere with day-to-day life, sleeping, so many things that people react to. I mean, I remember, I know I'm dating myself. I remember when NutraSweet, so the aspartame, that's the blue package people, guess what? They gave you free gumballs in the mail. I don't know if anyone remembers this, but they sent out gumballs to introduce aspartame. Well, NutraSweet aspartame phenylalanine is 200 times sweeter than sugar. Well, who needs that? Think about it. Who needs something to be 200 times sweeter than sugar? But those types of things, so we're getting our bodies and our taste buds used to this. And if you take just the example of phenylalanine or NutraSweet, that goes to the brain, and that enhances headaches and migraines and things like that. So they're out there, and those are what these additives and preservatives and sweeteners and artificial things can do.
Yeah, and that's the saddest part. When aspartame first came out and became so popular, it was really being prescribed and given to people that have, that suffer from diabetes. And now you find it in Coke and other things, I don't know. And then they keep you wanting the bad foods as well.
Well, yeah, and what happens is at first it came out, I as I said, glass half full, also benefited the doubt. So when it came out, it became true. I mean, what they thought was, if you're going to have something sweet that's normally high calorie, low nutrient quality, and just something that we don't want, wouldn't it be better to have something calorie-free or sugar-free at that point, if you think of diabetes? The problem that they didn't know but didn't discover until later was that it's so stimulatory to the brain that if you, for example, in the afternoon, if you've had an early lunch and you didn't eat enough lunch, and then your blood sugar starts going down and you feel a little bit hungry, if at that point you grab something like a Diet Coke or something with aspartame in it on an empty stomach, that artificial sweetener will actually stimulate insulin production. So now you have low-ish blood sugar because of the scenario I just painted. And now you've had something that's further stimulating the insulin. And within 20 minutes, people are wondering why they're in the pizza and the other stuff.
I had no idea.
Yeah, so they're finding that the artificial sweeteners just falsely elevate, that your body thinks it's getting sugar, so it's reacting. And it also changes, if you want to talk artificial sweeteners for a minute, it changes the gut flora. And so we're all about the microbiome. And in fact, I'll even say it here, my next course is going to include just a way you can reset your microbiome in 3 days as well. So we'll talk about that if you want, or that's just a flavor coming through. And so these artificial sweeteners, they change that entire microbiome. And they're now causing, they now know that in larger quantities of greater than 1 or 2 servings of an artificial sweetener a day can affect kidney function. So they're not that great.
So how do you feel then about the other sweetener, the erythritol, that I recently just touched on it in a video?
Well, it's still an artificial sweetener. It is a sugar alcohol. So in large quantities of that, you may be in the bathroom unexpectedly.
Really?
And for some of these newer ones, the truth of the matter is the jury just isn't completely out yet because there's not enough time behind it.
I saw one video where Dr. Michael Greger talked about how it might have an antioxidant potential. I guess the goal is not to try to replace sweetener with sweetener or sugar and all this, but maybe to kind of get the body to stop relying on the sugar in general. What do you think?
Oh, what do I think? Oh no, here's the, I think
question. It's a tough one.
It is tough because some people will say too that, stevia is okay. And that is one of the more natural ones from a specific fruit. Okay. But let's face it, all of our pharmaceuticals, a lot of them came from plants and they're not necessarily wonderful. So as long as, you do have to look at the research. I am evidence-based. Mm-hmm. And some of the research, as I said before, isn't quite out, but you also have to weigh what the rest of the diet and lifestyle looks like. Mm-hmm. And if somebody is just in that dire of a position where they do have just the lab values are so depressed or elevated, is however you want to perceive that, and they need to cut calories quickly, but there's certain aspects of lifestyle they're not willing to change, then we can look with things like stevia, like smaller amounts of erythritol. But if you think about the ice creams that tout themselves because you can now eat a pint, well, were you ever supposed to eat a pint of ice cream? I mean, I think that's the question. Is okay, maybe 2 servings or something, but should people really be encouraged to eat a pint of ice cream, no matter what if it's better for you or not? I don't know. But
I am of the mentality of do the best that you can. So if you have a little bit more time, I would like to touch on COVID and what 2020 was like. And if you'd like to share how life changed for you in terms of your programs, because we did start off with that. You were expecting 2020 to go one way and it went out in a different direction.
It changed. So, when I look back at 2020, the truth is I was on my own precipice of wanting to go. I shouldn't say having to. The truth is I wanted to go online, but I was absolutely afraid to show my face, afraid to talk, just afraid. Those in my inner circle know. They're like, you just do it. No, I couldn't just do it. And for me, so glass half full, something about the pandemic, especially when it first started, honestly, I can't tell you that it came to me in any more dramatic way than I'm about to tell you. Well, if the world is on Zoom, I won't be noticed. So I guess I'll just go ahead. And that's really how it started, from the classic introvert at heart person. Just became, well, if everybody's doing it, it's not that big of a deal. And out of that became habit. So that's really how it started, me just developing a presence online and really showing up. And this, it may sound however corny or however it sounds, but the truth is I enjoy being able to help more people. Mm-hmm. And that has been rewarding in itself. So it becomes, do I want to help more people more than I want to be stuck being afraid or just hold back, and wanting to help more people won out. So
Yeah.
It's been very rewarding.
And so is that around the same time that you started your Facebook group, support group, or you already had that going?
No, the Facebook group came with, I did the Ditch Processed Foods course around last October, and just wanted a place to further talk to people and help people. So the group came a little bit before that, probably a month before that. So yeah, that's when Food Sanctuary was born, and it's been fun. It's been rewarding.
I love that name. I feel like so many people need support, and whether you're fully on board as, being plant-based or not, the key is that Alisa will help you incorporate more healthier foods. And by the way, you started to mention one of the programs that's coming up.
Yes, I'm embarking on a 6-week program. It will be launched in March, and I took Ditch the Processed Foods, but I expanded it a little bit, and it's about better health, better energy, and it's still incorporating ditching processed foods and resetting your gut, resetting the microbiome, so that actually you can better handle some not so stellar choices. And not that that's a way to have to do that, but it once you start feeling better, and if you hop on board to really feel better, that's when the changes really come, because there's something about it that maybe you thought it wasn't for you, you wouldn't be able to attain it. Just too old, forget it. It's just a natural course of aging, and it's just not true. Yes. So we work with the pillars that you talk about and move forward.
So we're learning, and I'm glad you touched on gut health. We're learning more and more how important that is. That's probably more important than anything else. How long does it take for someone to sort of heal their gut?
Well, it depends on the level of healing that we're talking about, okay? So when I mentioned before that inflammation, you can feel better within 3 to 4 days. You can feel better as soon as your next meal. That's the truth. Mm-hmm. But if you start with the example of prebiotics versus probiotics. So probiotics are essentially gut bacteria. Mm-hmm. But people don't understand, separate digression a little bit, is that probiotics have very specific different functions. So if I tell you, for example, you're going to take a specific antibiotic to treat a certain bacterial infection, it's similar with probiotics. It's not always the case to just grab anything off the shelf and expect it to do miracles for you. You have to first see what your specific symptoms are. That being said, once you get probiotics in, which are the right gut bacteria, if I don't give them prebiotics, which are the food for the probiotics, how are those probiotics going to survive? And they won't. So when we go back to how long does it take, one way to get prebiotics in the system is to incorporate beans on it, half a cup a day. Let's start there. People aren't going to feel as comfortable if they haven't had beans in a while. It's somewhat of a loading dose. So you might feel uncomfortable. You'll be gassy. You might be crampy. Is that going to make you feel better as soon as that next meal? No, that's going to take a little bit more time. So when we talk about healing conditions and really helping that leaky gut, or where things are going through and passing through that just aren't supposed to happen, and we want to really seal that up. It really, I hate to be so diplomatic about this answer, but it's the truth. It's where are people starting from? And if you have a very damaged gut, then you might need some help with certain supplements and the quantities of the foods. And we may have to work with juicing versus smoothies so that we can get these nutrients in and we can heal. And so you may have to add more complicated components, and it could take you not just a month, not just 6 months. It could take longer. It could take a year. I mean, the possibilities of how long it could take are rather lengthy. But the truth is you should be able to notice results within a relatively short amount of time. That depends on the damage you have.
I had a list of a bunch of questions that I wanted to ask you, but I think our listeners can just go to your website and visit your blog to learn more about the other things that you talk about, like, for example, the power of vitamin D when dealing with COVID-19, and then you talk about boredom snacking. That's an important topic. So can you share with our listeners like how they can learn more about you and your social media?
Absolutely. You can always head to my website, which is liveyourbest365.com. If you're interested in a specific consultation, you can schedule just a complimentary chat with me for a half hour. Also, you can head over to Instagram, liveyourbest365, or over on Facebook, Live Your Best 365 with Alisa Bloom, and the Food Sanctuary Facebook group is over there. And you can just hop over to join that group right from Live Your Best 365 with Alisa Bloom.
And do you have like a kind of like a final message or words of encouragement for our listeners?
Words of encouragement. No, it's 2021. Start over. Well, what is it? I was looking at some things today. You just got to persevere. We touched on this today. And the truth is in feeling as good as your next meal, which is an absolute reality, not a possibility, that's where resilience and perseverance come in, is just understand that the fact that you could feel better just as soon as your next meal means that progress is along the way, and just keep moving one foot in front of the other.
Well, it's been such a pleasure having you on the show and getting to know you a little bit more. Thank you, Alisa Bloom.
Thank you so much for having me.
You've been listening to the Plant-Based DFW podcast show. If you like our content, please like, share, and leave a review. Our goal is to provide quality episodes to help support the community.